You wouldn't typically hear Mazda and Jeep used together in the same sentence, but the truth is, both have gotten so competitive that we have no choice but to compare them. The CX-50 actually does ride like a sports car in that when you go around a corner, the suspension leans and there's not a ton of body roll. The suspension is divine. Feels great, soaks up all the bumps, very comfortable, definitely tuned more for an off-road application, I think. Hybridized and ready for just about anything, today we are comparing the 2025 Mazda CX-50 against the 2026 Jeep Cherokee to see which is best. What are their interiors like? How do they drive? What are their amenities? We shall find out. New for the 2025 model year is the CX-50 Hybrid, which addresses some of the efficiency concerns we had about the non-hybrid 2024 model year cars. In this case, Mazda did the smart thing and simply outsourced the job to Toyota. Powering the all-wheel drive CX-50 Hybrid is Toyota's 2.5-liter four-cylinder hybrid setup that makes a total system output of 219 horsepower. It returns an EPA-rated 39 miles per gallon in the city, 37 on the highway, and 38 combined, up from the non-hybrid turbo CX-50's 23 miles per gallon in the city, 29 on the highway, and 25 combined. Not great. All that's wrapped up in elegant Mazda styling inside and out. And if you've been around modern Mazdas, this really shouldn't come as a surprise. The CX-50's additional exterior plastic cladding suggests ruggedness and utility, but its capacities fall rather short. It has an 850-pound payload capacity and a 1,500-pound towing capacity. This particular test car came in the top-tier Premium Plus trim, which gets you leather seats, heated and ventilated front seats, a leather-wrapped steering wheel, head-up display, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, a wireless phone charger, and the 10.25-inch center display. Total as-tested price comes to $41,995. After a brief hiatus, Jeep brings back the Cherokee for the 2026 model year. Built on new vehicle architecture and coming standard with all-wheel drive and a hybrid powertrain, the Cherokee has been seriously overhauled. It'll fill the space between the Compass and the Grand Cherokee. The new Cherokee marks Jeep's very first standard hybrid in the US. It's a turbocharged 1.6-liter unit helped along by two electric motors to produce a total system output of 210 horsepower. It returns an EPA-rated fuel economy of 42 miles per gallon in the city, 33 on the highway, and 37 combined. Usable capacities are also much better than the Mazdas. Like the Mazda, the Jeep has an 850-pound payload capacity, but it has a far more usable 3,500-pound towing capacity. Despite being a brand new car, the Cherokee looks pretty much like every Jeep you've ever seen before. That is the power of heritage-inspired styling, I suppose. The interior is the biggest change of all, however. In addition to increased passenger and cargo space, seeing as this Cherokee is larger than ever, all trims get the 10.3-inch driver display and 12.3-inch infotainment touchscreen. The cabin is filled with interesting shapes and textures, though the separate climate bar below the touchscreen feels pretty cheap to the touch, like a piece of flimsy plastic stuck over the controls. Also, check out that almost ellipsoid steering wheel. I have a feeling that'll be interesting once I start driving. Anyway, this particular Cherokee comes in the Overland 4x4 trim, which gets you wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, heated front seats, a heated steering wheel, an acoustic windshield, and adaptive cruise control with stop and go. An additional equipment package for $1,495 adds ventilated front seats, heated rear seats, and a surround view camera system. And since the Overland is also the most expensive Cherokee trim you can buy, its as-tested price comes to $48,085, which is quite a bit more than the Mazda. So there you have them, the CX-50 Hybrid and Cherokee on paper. Time to get out there and see what they're like from behind the wheel. First off, Mazda CX-50, a masterclass in recognizing when someone, Toyota, is better at something than you are and taking full advantage of it. To start, the steering wheel is small and feels good in the hand, and really, No matter what driving mode you're in, the steering remains tight and weighty, which is kind of rare in this segment. It makes it very enjoyable. Also, it has kind of that hallmark Mazda-ness to the steering, which tells me that Mazda actually did work to make this car feel like the rest of its cars, so that's impressive. The CX-50 also rides kind of like a sports car. The suspension leans and turns, there's not a ton of body roll, and it's fairly good at mitigating choppy pavement. You still feel it, but it doesn't ruin your day or anything like that. The brakes are strong, but they kind of do this strange thing when you do go to use them. They feel a little wooden, as in it feels like there's something between the brake rotor and the brake caliper. Not sure what. That might be just one of those hybrid regen braking things that hasn't been ironed out yet in this car. Power is good, especially low-end power, seeing as it's a hybrid, and also top-end power is pretty good. So if you're trying to accelerate from a fast speed to a faster speed, the car will be able to do it. Like maybe you're trying to get ahead of somebody on the highway. Mid-range power is where things fall off a little bit. Say you're bombing around the canyons and you're trying to like power out of a corner, you're gonna have to wait a little longer for that acceleration to come on. But again, it's a still pretty fun car to drive. Tech is where the CX-50 falls short. We'll start with cruise control. So it does have adaptive cruise control, which means you can set a follow distance and a speed, and the car will follow the flow of traffic. I found that it accelerated very aggressively when slower traffic moved out of the way. That's generally something I've seen with less refined, older adaptive cruise systems. So maybe this system hasn't gotten a recent update. And there's also no lane keep assist at all. So you're just on your own with keeping the car in the lane. Not terrible, but when everybody else has lane keep assist and you're the only one who doesn't offer it, kind of sticks out. Second, the screen up here, this is not a touch screen. A lot of people this week have been like trying to touch it. It is not touch screen. You control it via this little click wheel down here, which admittedly feels good in the hand, but if you're trying to like enter an address, oh my God. Trying to type with this thing is bananas in 2025. I understand that a lot of people just get into this car and they plug in Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and they're on their way, but it is still a click wheel if you want to interact with the interface. However, after spending some time with it, I have to say, it's not terrible. I mean, you don't have to look down to see what your hands are doing. There's an easily accessible back button. You can bump the wheel up, down, left, right if you need to. And what's even better is this screen is perfectly within your line of sight. So you don't need to move your eyes very far from the road in order to use it. So perhaps in not updating the system, Mazda has actually come out on top in terms of user interface. That's an interesting thing to think about. Finally, the ergonomics of the CX-50 are okay. They aren't stellar. I like to say that this car is the best car of 2018, and I still hold to that. The air vents are a little on the small side, but there are physical buttons for the climate, so you don't have to be distracted when you're using it. But there's a few strange choices about cubbies, as in there aren't enough of them, and your phone kind of goes under your elbow, which means maybe you kind of lose track of it. You can't see it very easily. Bigger phones might have problems fitting on this wireless charge pad. So it's definitely a dated interior. Not by no means a bad one, just dated. So after driving the CX-50 around all morning, it feels sort of like it writes checks it can't cash. And I know that sounds like a bad thing, but just hear me out. All of the stuff that it does that is sporty, the fast steering, the grabby brakes, the low-end power, indicates a sporty car. So it encourages you to go fast. And you can. But if you're going anywhere beyond 5/10, might fall apart a little bit. It is a mainstream car and that becomes clear. But for most people, that doesn't matter. Most people just want a car that gets good gas mileage, can fit all their stuff, and is a little more fun to drive than the competition. And so on that front, the CX-50 delivers. Sure, its interior is a little dated, but for the people who staunchly do not want touch everything, the latest shiny technology, this is it. I can see the appeal here very much. And now for the Jeep Cherokee, which is like night and day from the Mazda. To start, I loathe this steering wheel. It's a strange shape, it's lumpy, it's thick, it doesn't feel good in the hands. What was so wrong with just a circle? Like literally remaking the wheel. And this is connected to a steering system that is sloppy, it's numb, it's not communicative regardless of driving mode. End-to-end, not my favorite, not that great. Doesn't loan a lot of confidence to driving the Cherokee quickly. And the thing is, I can feel that this car has more to give. I'm just afraid to reach for it just because the steering doesn't communicate very well. So I don't really know what the front of the car is doing. In better news, the suspension is divine. Feels great, soaks up all the bumps, very comfortable, definitely tuned more for an off-road application, I think, because it is a little wobbly when you do quick weight transfers. And sitting here in this seat, it feels kind of like you're sitting atop of everything rather than in the car, which is interesting. So brakes, rather squishy, and there is some dive in the car. But in emergency maneuvers, you don't need to worry about anything happening unexpectedly. Just kind of numb the brakes. There is actually pretty good linear power throughout, both low end, mid-range, and top end. Again, it is not a quick car, it's not a particularly fast car, but it'll do all the things that you need it to do. And curiously, it doesn't even really feel like a hybrid. It feels like just, another one of those rather underpowered 4-cylinder cars. As far as technology is concerned, this is a brand new model, so it has all of the bells and whistles. We tried out the adaptive cruise control both at night and during the day, and one of our editors actually reported at night the lane keep kind of had the steering wheel shimmying a lot to keep the car in the lane. So we tried it again during the day and it was bang straight. So maybe that can be fixed during a software update. This is also very much a pre-production model. That could be pre-production issues. We're not sure, but that was just something to keep an eye on. What also I thought was curious was this car doesn't have an eco drive mode. It has, auto, sport, and a bunch of drive modes for loose gravel situations like snow and dirt, no eco mode. So that's interesting. And finally, as ergonomics and layout is concerned, it's probably one of the most elegant ones that we've seen out here so far. Of course, there's the 2-screen layout, but Jeep has actually managed to make it so that they are distinct and they're not just one slab pasted across the top of the dashboard and that's that. They're also positioned low and out of your line of sight. So you can use them, but they're not completely distracting from the act of driving. And throughout the cabin, there are interesting materials, interesting textures. It's very upscale. The one thing that I am kind of annoyed by, and the Lexus RX is guilty of this as well, is the door handle is no longer a physical latch. It's a electronic button. Again, then this is not just a Cherokee issue, it's a broader industry issue. I don't know who had issue with just unlatching doors, and now that we're all of a sudden seeing all these electronic door buttons, feels like a safety hazard if you're having an emergency situation and you're trying to grab for the door handle because you've forgotten that it's a button. There is a redundant latch over here towards the front of the door, but why don't they just have latch? I'm not really sure. The most interesting thing that has arisen in driving this Cherokee is how invisible it makes its hybrid powertrain. And by that I mean there are no badges anywhere, there's no settings anywhere to indicate that it's a hybrid. It is perhaps the most invisible hybrid powertrain that I have seen in almost any car. And my suspicion of this is perhaps that this is the natural culmination of hybrid powertrains, that it is just so normal that you don't feel the need to call it out. Or maybe it's the pill and a peanut butter way of getting hesitant buyers into hybrid cars is just by hiding the fact it is a hybrid. I don't know. You can decide that one. But seeing as we have driven both cars, it is time to get out and pick a winner.